Hi, this is James I. Bond, author of Brain Glue, and you're listening to Awakened Nation with Brad Zollis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zollis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I have a great guest on today, and I think you're going to love him, especially if you are a salesperson or you're dealing with behavioral communication styles and they are frustrating you. This guy has some pretty amazing answers, and he gave some of those answers in his TED Talk, which we're going to talk about as well. Please welcome to the show, Mr. James Bond.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me. As you
Sure,
can
James.
tell, my parents, I think they had a sense of humor, but anyway.
Yeah, I was, yeah, it's so iconic, that name, and you lucked out. It's probably actually been a chuckle, but it's also helped you in your career, I'm sure.
Well, in the beginning, it was a pain, you know. I was actually born after the books, but before the movies. But once the movies started coming out, everyone was like, James Bond, James Bond. It's like, okay, you know. People hang up on me all the time. I had this guy who's an investment banker named Jesse James. I mean, is that a good name for an investment banker? It's like a
Yeah,
bank robber. So I called his
exactly.
office. I called his office. And I said, hey, is Jesse in? And his secretary says, who's calling? I said, James Bond. He said, yeah, right, and hung up on me.
No, seriously. And you keep calling back and keeps hanging up on you. Um, I have to give a big shout out before we continue to Marcus Ogden for recommending you to be on the show. Thank you, Marcus. Great recommendation here. And I want to dig in right away. You wrote the book Brain Glue. How selling becomes much easier by making your ideas sticky. Uh, for 13 years, Mr. James Bond ran one of Southern California's leading behavioral management firms, working with a who's who of American business. Early in his career, he ran an advertising agency in Montreal. He is a workshop leader and past workshop chairman for the resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration and has been a featured guest speaker at three Southern California universities. And we're going to be discussing not only his book, but I loved your TED Talk, by the way, James. And his TED Talk is entitled Influence, Persuade, and Sell Using Sticky Phrases. Please welcome to the show, officially to the show, Mr. James Bond.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me. I mean,
Let's
my
get
parents had me, but you're having me today, so that's great.
there. You go. I have to ask you about this because your TED Talk centered around discovering these emotional trigger words that our brain immediately sits forward on. And let's go into that because you know your mom was so proud of you because you had a billboard up and that's my son. But you started to realize, and folks, if you're of a certain age like I am, you will remember the ad campaign. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Well, guess who lost that account and tried to pitch it? This guy right here, James. Let's start there with you. You were frustrated that you lost the account and you didn't do what most people do. You decided to question why you lost it. Let's go.
Yeah, well, so I'm originally from Montreal. I lived in Southern California for 37 years. We actually named our middle daughter LA. We've got a son and three daughters. So we know how long have we been here? Well, how old's Lauren? Okay, that's great. But in Montreal, I worked my way up and built an advertising agency and won some of the world's biggest clients: Kraft Foods, Timex watches, Avon Cosmetics, Seagram's. Their world headquarters is in Montreal. And I'm a logical person, as most of us are logical. And so I had an opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America with powerful, logical reasons why you should not do drugs. Okay. I mean, we're taught in school, if you want to debate, use logic. That's wrong. I didn't realize that.
Yep.
We lost. And what did we lose to? We lost to a guy holding an egg saying, this is your brain, then cracking the shell and dropping the egg into a sizzling frying pan with exaggerated sizzling sound. Shh. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And when I saw the ad, two things came up in me. The first one was I recognized this was infinitely more powerful than my logical reasons why you should not do drugs. This was emotional selling, but it terrified me. This is the second thing is I
Yeah.
realized this is emotional selling, something I have no idea how to do. I mean, how would you even come up with the idea of using a brain and dropping it into, I mean, using an egg and dropping it into a frying pan and using the message, this is your brain on drugs. I mean, it was like profound. And I realized they don't teach this in school. That's the one thing, okay? And so what I did was I checked in the library and like there's no books on it or anything. Like, nobody talks about this. And so I created a passion box right next to my computer. I put a box and I call it the passion box. And every time I saw an ad or heard something that was emotionally powerful, it could be a quote from a famous person. Um, Instead of trying to overanalyze it, I put it in the box in the hopes that eventually I'd understand, I'd be able to figure out how does emotional selling work. Well, about, more than 10 years later, we moved to Southern California. I met John Gray. And John Gray was telling me, I met him at this conference, and he was telling me he's a fabulous author. He wrote a book called Men, Women, and Relationships. And he said he was frustrated because every single person who read it blew their minds. They said, this has helped me strengthen my relationship. This is a fabulous book. But like almost no one was buying it. He sold a few thousand copies, and he was frustrated. And so he got this crazy idea. What if I change the title to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? And tweak the content just a little so it refers to it throughout the book. So when you're reading it, you read it, but Men Are From Mars, there's a quote, whatever.
Right.
Guess what happened? Almost overnight, he went from 500,000 to 1 million to 2 million. He sold, in my book, I say he sold 10 million copies because I know him and I did my research. Well, Steve Harrison, who helped him with marketing, said, no, you're wrong, James. I said, what? I did my research. He said, no, we're over 50 million books sold now. He went from 20,000 to 50 million books sold just because he changed the title.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when I got home, I dumped the passion. I realized first I went 3x5 card. I'm writing Men Are From Mars on a 3x5 card. And I'm about to put it in my passion box. And I go, wait a second. Men Are From Mars is a metaphor. Men aren't really from a different planet. I mean, I think there's some women out there that think we are. Okay, I can
Yes.
understand why. But we're not
Yeah.
really from a different planet. Let me start there. Okay, I don't think we are. But Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus is a metaphor. And then I realized that, wait a second, this is your brain on drugs as a metaphor. They probably thought, okay, so when you take drugs, what happens? Well, it fries your brain. Oh, okay, what else gets fried? Eggs. Let's show an egg frying in a frying pan and say, there's your brain on drugs, okay? And I took the passion box and I went, is metaphors the secret to emotional selling? So I dumped the passion box on my bed and I quickly discovered 14 brain that metaphors is one of 14 brain triggers. When I started to understand the brain triggers, I went like, wow. I started applying it to clients because I was a coach. First I went like,
Right.
wow, this is amazing, and I discovered this. But then I started applying it to clients. I had the second client I ever worked with, that I was in Southern California. I said, well, okay, there's a construction company. It took them 10 years. They reached $2 million of sales. In 1 year, I took them to 10 million. And then they reached 32 million 2 years later, all because I tweaked their pitch. And it was amazing. I love this line: switch your pitch if you want to get rich. There's a brain glue tool, okay? Or I got another one. It's, use brain glue. If you use brain glue, you learn how to light the fire of desire in your buyer. I mean, like there are
Wow.
expressions that are just like amazing. I'm telling you, people are telling me this. If you spend money on advertising, if you run Facebook ads or any other types of ads, you have a reasonable product, and you're not making over $1 million a year, you need my book. Okay, I'm not just saying
Yes.
that. Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, he sold over 500 million books, which is pretty good. There's not even 500 million people in America, and he sold
Right.
500 million books. He starts reading my book, and he gets pissed off at me. I'm like, he says, I started reading your book, and I couldn't put the damn thing down. I'm like, I'm sorry. Can I get that quote? And he actually, he said that if you're in business and you don't know this, you have a massive disadvantage. It's just, which is great that, famous people, I mean, he didn't need me telling him what to do, telling him how to market. I mean, geez, he's marketing and he sold over 60 bestsellers beyond Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's blowing people's minds. I mean, it's really, I seem to have uncovered something that nobody's talking about that
Yeah.
affects us emotionally.
I love that you're bringing this up because I spent years on the other side of marketing and advertising, and that is I did the big meetings, the corporate meetings. So I was training like pharmaceutical executives and
Mhm.
salespeople and all this. And what you are really talking about is a phrase or something that strikes a chord in our brain, and we immediately resonate with more of the story. Like Chicken Soup for the Soul immediately makes you go, oh, this is healing stories because chicken soup is used for healing. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That resonated incredibly well because people were like, wait a minute, was I raised by a poor dad? Or, that it begins to resonate. But I'm chuckling while you're talking because I don't know if you ever saw the movie Crazy People with Dudley Moore, but what happened in the movie is he's a big time advertising executive on Madison Avenue in New York City, and he has a nervous breakdown. And he decides, because he's the greatest ad campaign guy, he checks into a mental hospital and his staff still is working with him. And so they come to the mental hospital and he's just snapped. He doesn't care anymore. He thinks it's ridiculous what he does for a living. And so he gets snarky and he starts writing ad copy. And the first one that is a huge hit, I'm not going to go into because it's kind of dirty, but the second one is this. He goes, he just writes honest ad copy. He decides, I'm not writing this foofy stuff. I am writing real stuff. And he goes, his second big campaign was for Metamucil. And he goes, drink Metamucil. Otherwise, you're going to get colon cancer and die. That was a headline. And they sold out a Metamucil in like 2 days across the United States. Like everybody was grabbing Metamucil. And one campaign after another that truly resonated at the emotional level with people. I think you're on to something. This is incredible. Um, let's go into, can you name some of those five brain triggers that you discovered
Well,
that
there are
just
14. There are 14
14,
brain
but
triggers.
there's
So,
14, but I want you to just let's focus on the top five for our listeners.
well, and I don't think there's any top five. And the reason I'm going to say that is because if the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit. Okay. I mean, whoever
Yes.
thought rhyme would,
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a licking and keeps on ticking. I'm old enough to remember
Yeah.
the Timex ads.
Yes.
I mean, so Morton Salt invented salt that doesn't clump because back in those days, in the early 1900s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, salt used to clump. And so
Right.
they invented a way to develop salt that doesn't clump. So if you invented a product, a salt, and you're the only salt initially that doesn't clump, that really flows smoothly, what would your slogan be? I mean, who ever thought of this? Okay. When it rains, it pours. You
Right.
have a girl with an
Yes.
umbrella. Okay.
That's why they have that on there.
For over 100 years, it was over 100 years ago, they still dominate the retail salt industry. Why? Because it resonates, it sticks to the brain. Who ever thought of that?
Yeah.
I mean, how about James Carville got Bill Clinton elected? What was his slogan? It's the economy, stupid. Okay. Stupid? Like what?
Wow.
And I realized there are trigger words, okay? Trigger words is one of those things. So, okay. So you ever hear about this kid who dropped out of high school? He borrowed some money from his dad, but he became a billionaire with the help of one word. Okay. So here, let me give you some examples. Um, what does billionaire Richard Branson, Madonna, and olive oil have in common?
They're all virgins.
Exactly. You got it. Virgin olive oil. Okay. like a virgin, touch for that.
Right.
That song was the song that turned her into a blockbuster. Okay. And Richard Branson recognized that when he started, he didn't have a lot of money. And so he started a little a magazine for musicians. And eventually he decided to start a record company, and he called it Virgin Records because he thought it would really grab attention, which it does. Okay.
Yeah.
And he got people like the Rolling Stones, like all kinds of groups that came to Virgin Records because it stood out it jumped out of your attention span. Okay.
Right.
I remember I'm sitting and watching, I have a TV next to me, and I don't normally have it on, but I had it on while I was doing computer work. And I heard this Johnny Unitas, no, I forget who it was, but a famous baseball player. And he's talking about Blue Emu, the anti-arthritis cream. And I'm not even paying attention, but then he says, Blue Emu, it works fast and you won't stink. What did he just say? What? It just woke up my brain. It's like, what? I love,
Yeah.
and then from that point forward, I was listening to the commercial to understand like what was he talking about. And so we have to remember that, I mean, people see tons of ads, they see tons of products. I mean, today, we live on our cell phones, okay? We live on our phones, our iPhones, or our, I mean, it just, and so I remember the young kids walking across the street, typing on their phone, okay, doing texting. Today, I see old people doing it, like everybody. They walk across the street, not even looking at traffic. And so here's one of the things I use as a metaphor, and I'll give you two metaphors, okay? The first metaphor is for brain glue, is so you get out of your house, you get in your car, and you start driving down your street. Normally you're looking, you don't even look at all the houses down the street or apartments, you're just
Right.
like, I'm going to work or I'm going to, so wherever I'm going, you ignore it, okay? Because you've seen them and you know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
But today you get in your car and you drive down the street, and two houses down, there's flames coming out of your neighbor's window. Aren't you going to go, huh? Does he know his house is on fire? Should I call 911? Is my house going to burn down?
Right.
It wakes up your brain. Okay. And that's what brain glue does. Is brain glue, it wakes up, it gets flames coming out of your ad. It gets flames coming out of your message. It's the economy's stupid. What? We're in sales, they teach us KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Not keep it simple, salesman or salesperson. Keep it simple, stupid. Like that word wakes up the brain. You're like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
And so when we realize that, so here's one for me. So brain glue is like a naked man running through your backyard. You can't take your eyes off it, right? Gets your attention, doesn't it? If you look in your backyard, you see some naked guy running through your backyard. That's what brain glue does.
Yeah.
I have this guy who's David Baer, Baer, just because I'm this word. And he's got an advertising company that coaches advertisers. And I said, I got the perfect name for your company. He said, what? I said, Bare Naked Advertising. He starts laughing, but he says, I don't think so. He's got a partner. His partner says, yeah, that's a great idea. But he's like, I'm not sure. So I love, there's a business slogan, okay? Most people don't know this because it used to be in America, but they stopped, and they have it in Europe. So who would have a slogan like this? Screw yourself.
Probably a tool company.
Yeah, it could be. How about IKEA, the furniture company? If you ever buy a piece of furniture from IKEA, you gotta screw it in. You gotta screw it. It comes with screws.
I have parts left over, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. I know. But it's just when you understand how powerful this is, it just becomes like so much fun. But it also becomes really a way to wake up the brain.
I agree with you because just look at our own families. You have a secret language that your family has, and all you have to do is mention one word, Aunt Diane, and everybody rolls their eyes because they know it's a secret language. And I think in sales, this is incredible because I've studied DISC behavioral communications. Some people are into other modalities, but that's the one I like because it's less complicated. KISS. It's incredibly simple. All the others fall into these subcategories where, Myers-Briggs drives me nuts because it's like, well, you're, an E and a P and a T. And I'm like, what? It's too much for me. And I gravitate towards DISC. So this is another level. For those of you who are value selling, this is a great way to implant and change your sales script just enough that it makes your customers lean forward. I love this. Hey, do you have some great examples of some of the clients you've worked with where you just change their script a little bit and you don't have to go into who they are, but I'd love to hear because you mentioned a few numbers and I think it's incredibly impressive for people to understand changing one or two words or phrases in your pitch can really change the dynamics of everything.
Yeah, well, so one of the tools is called alliteration, a repetition of sound. Okay,
Right.
I remember it with I'll give you an example. Well, I remember, Coca-Cola uses alliteration. Coca-Cola. Okay,
Yeah.
um, TED Talk,
Chitty,
Coca-Cola,
here's
Best
one.
Buy,
Chitty Chitty
PayPal.
Bang Bang. Remember when Chitty Chitty
Chitty
Bang
Chitty
Bang?
Bang Bang, exactly. Well, how about
Yeah.
this one? Okay, I got a great one for you then. Okay, you want to talk about that? And this isn't mine, but I just give you an example, and I'll tell you how I used it. So Bob Parsons started a company called Jomax Technologies. I'm sure nobody's ever heard of it. Okay,
Right.
until I tell you what the name would change to. And he created a way to get URLs. Your if you want to buy URLs or domain names, and then help you build websites. Okay. And he was struggling, just kind of like John Gray, who did Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus. That people who'd buy it loved it, but he couldn't get a lot of people to buy it. So he sat down with a couple of people that he worked with, and he said, "We got to come up with a better name because somehow Jomax Technologies, which is named after a street in Arizona, I believe, you know, it wasn't working because he didn't think the name is important. But you got to remember the name's important, okay?" So he said, let's come up with a name that has like alliteration, like buh, buh, duh, duh, okay? And somebody said, Big Daddy, that would be cool. But they checked it and it was taken. So he said, well, okay, how about GoDaddy?
Yeah.
GoDaddy is a multi-billion-dollar company. Do you think it would be as successful if it was still called Jomax Technologies? No. Okay. And
Yeah.
so I'm in a barber shop, and a guy's cutting my hair who bought my book, which is really great. So he's telling everybody in the barber shop all this stuff. He's got like multiple barbers. And he said to me, okay, so we want to change the name of our barber shop. What should we change it to? And so the first thing I did was I went like, okay, barber, bubba, what rhymes with barber? Okay, so what do you do? Haircut, haircut. Oh, haircut heroes. Why don't we call you guys the haircut heroes? Everyone goes like, ah, that's an awesome name, haircut heroes.
Yes.
Change the name outside the haircut heroes. So that's one way to do it. There's another tool that's called anchoring, where you take something that already exists in the brain and then you twist it a little bit. You could use it exactly the same way, or you could twist it a little bit. I'll give you a few examples. So I'm old enough to remember. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember. I can't do this, okay, but I'll try. Head and shoulders, knees and toes, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose.
You're
So
right.
if we're launching a dandruff shampoo, what would be a good name for a dandruff shampoo?
Head
Head
and
and
shoulders.
shoulders,
Yes.
because it's already stuck in people's brains. Okay. Bobby Flay, I saw this thing on the History Channel. We recorded the show, and it's on Bobby Flay, and I'm going like, "Who's Bobby Flay?" My wife says, "Yeah, he's a famous chef." And it's telling in the story in the biography, it says he came up with he grills products. Okay, so grill
Yeah.
sounds like girl. So what's a phrase you can use with girl? Boy meets girl. Oh, why don't we call it boy meets grill? Boy Meets Grill became massively successful and helped him become a blockbuster. By the way, in it, he was talking about Jamie Oliver, the naked chef.
Yes.
Oh, he's a naked chef. Oh, he's naked. You know.
Yeah.
So, but
That's
it's
incredible.
when you start to understand these things. So for me, um, Dirty. Who would name their product Dirty or their book or their movie Dirty? Right? Dirty
Yeah.
Dancing, Dirty Harry, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I'm old enough to remember the Dirty Dozen. Okay, I mean
Yeah.
Dirty was really great. So I wanted. I contacted I think 5 or 6 different major media like newspapers and magazines, Business Week and stuff like that, and I wanted them to review my book. And so I identified authors in these major magazines and newspapers, and then I sent emails to 21 of the authors. I think it was 21 authors. And I used the word dirty in my headline, and that got people's attention. I said, the dirty truth about an article you wrote. Okay.
Whoa.
Within
That's
24 hours, and these people get tons of emails. Okay, within 24 hours, two of them immediately contacted me and said, "Okay, I got it. You got to send me your book. I want to check this out. Yeah, you got me with a dirty truth about an article I wrote." But it's just because it wakes up the brain.
yeah.
When you understand how it wakes up the brain, we want to wake up the brain because people are so overwhelmed with information and knowledge that if you don't wake up the brain, then you think they're listening, but they're not.
Yeah, I've seen this in social media where somebody purposely writes a phrase or something that's common knowledge and they purposely eschew it in a completely different direction. So everybody comes in to correct them and their analytics go through the roof and they do this on purpose. And I fall for it many, many times. But I see this, it's almost like it has to be in the zeitgeist of our, maybe subconscious knowledge base that we're walking around with that we're unconsciously unaware that's there. So it's almost like a superpower that you're using with people, like Socratic questioning or archetypes. And that's my favorite one, by the way, archetypes. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know archetypes make us lean forward, they trigger us, they make us, Superman and Batman represent something very strong in men, whereas Wonder Woman and other characters get women to sit forward. So let's talk a little bit about archetypes and perhaps Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey.
Exactly. Well, so I love this. I'm in marketing, and so I've learned this on behavioral management. But that um, 17 magazine is not read by 17-year-old women. It's
Really?
read by 15 and 16-year-old women. Who want to be like that. There's aspiration. And when we understand aspiration, then it really helps us. I love the one L'Oreal because you're worth it.
Right.
I mean, when we understand the aspiration, you're talking about Superman and Batman and stuff, that's aspirations. I want to be like that. Yeah, he's cool. I mean, he's defender and all that stuff.
Right.
This is the thing about brain glue. It's brain triggers. There are brain triggers that are wired into us. There are patterns. We love certain types of patterns. Okay. When we understand the pattern, then we can actually apply this with brain glue. Okay. With our marketing or our persuasion. It doesn't have to just be marketing. I want to tell you this. Okay. This is about persuasion. So first, let me start with a phrase. Okay. Jack and Jill went up the.
Hill.
Okay. How many? I bet everybody who's listening know that. Okay. Now, the last time you heard it might have been 10, 20, maybe 50 years ago, 60 years ago for me. I'm old. What can I say? And yet I can be on my deathbed and somebody said, "Hey, James, Jack and Joe went up there." And I go, "Fill the fetch a pail of water." I mean, I'd remember it on my deathbed because rhyme is wired into our brain. It gets wired into our
Yeah.
brain. It's a pattern we like.
Right.
So when we understand the patterns, chiasmus is a great pattern. Okay. So here's a pattern a lot of people never heard the word chiasmus. Okay.
Yeah.
Chiasmus is opposite. AB rhyme is ABAB. Chiasmus is ABBA, and I'll give you some examples. Winners never quit, and quitters never win. When the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Right.
All for one and one for all. I remember President John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Okay.
Yes.
He also said, mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. Malcolm X said, he said, he was a civil rights activist in the early days of the civil rights industry. So he
Right.
could have said, you have no idea how hard it is being a black person in America, back then, I guess even now for many. He didn't say
Right.
that. He said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock landed on us.
Yes.
Okay. He also said, which a lot of people don't know, this was referred to him, but he actually developed this phrase: when you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. They
Hmm.
have comedian Mae West from the early days of the movie industry loved chiasmus. Okay. She said,
Yes, I remember.
it's better to be looked over than overlooked. Women like a man with a past, but they prefer a man with a present. Okay. Show up with a present. When women go wrong, men go right after them. And good girls go to heaven, bad girls go everywhere. Okay. And this is one, hopefully I'm not crossing a line on this, but it's a hard man is good to find.
Yep, I remember that one.
So yeah,
My
so she, but and so, but it's chiasma sticks, and it's really fun when you use that. I had this because we had a behavioral management firm, and one of the tools we had would be helping behavior change on senior managers and companies, major some
right.
of the world's biggest companies. And so I said, well, I kind of know this, so I should explain this. So I said, you know, you need to change the habits of your key people, or their habits will change you. No, I would say for your key people, you need to change their habits, or their habits will change you. And people would go like, oh, what do you mean? And it would get us to start talking about
Wow.
something. So, but it's just when we understand how these tools work, it works in comedy. Okay. I'd
Yeah.
rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. Okay. I'm not really, uh, I'm older. So I'd rather wake up and pee than pee and wake up,
Right.
you know?
That's funny. I did stand-up comedy for a number of years, and it was amazing how I learned to not segue, but be direct and jump. You jump, and it triggers the brain and says in some way, we're here to make you laugh. And so the juxtaposition and the not doing a segue is incredibly important to make comedy work because it's almost striking with words the brain, and I find that fascinating. Um,
Well, I know I have two friends who are among the top 100 attorneys in America. And one of them is in the top 10. And I'm not allowed to say his name. So I'm not going to say his name because he doesn't want competitors to know what he does. Okay. But he recognized this. If I can make the judge and or the jury laugh, I have a better chance of winning the case,
yes.
especially if it's an even case. And he has a lot of people a lot of other attorneys who have cases that they know they're not going to be able to win, and they'll transfer it over to him and ask him, could you handle this? He doesn't win every case, but he wins a lot of these cases that felt unwinnable because he can make the judge and or the jury laugh. And that's why
Right.
with us, it's the same. If you can make your prospect laugh, you have a better chance because it triggers, oxytocin in the brain. I mean, it makes it easier to get them to be more receptive.
Well, let's dig into laughter because studies have shown that if you can get an audience to laugh or the people you're teaching to laugh, they lean forward and listen more intently. And I'm somebody who started my professional speaking career in my probably mid 40s. Okay. So between 40 and in my 50s, even, I was doing keynotes. And I noticed because of my background in comedy and business, I could frame let's say something I wanted to get across that was highly technical. I could make them laugh and then give them the real meat of what I was trying to
Right.
discuss. And that was a real rare thing. And I noticed I could get higher fees than my other speaker brethren because I would jump off the stage, go into the audience, and do what we called in comedy crowd work, but I would bend it around always to business stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a really, I mean, and I still do. I get hired to speak, but it's amazing to watch. And there are people who are much better at it than me. I'll be honest. Uh, when you can get your prospect to laugh and chuckle, there's two things I think that goes on. They're more receptive to your message.
Yep.
That's number one. And number two, that greasy, unwanted sales pitch that they repulse from now shifts into you being a human being instead of a sales guy or saleswoman, and now all resistance to your sales cycle starts to drop because you're making a joke out of it, and it's like, look, you can buy from me, or you can buy from Bob, and everything is going to go to hell, and everybody laughs. So let's talk about laughter as a way, it's brain glue to get a person to laugh and lean forward.
Well, absolutely. So I work with Warren Buffett's team. Okay, Warren Buffett
Okay.
and his team when he started buying companies because I have a behavioral management background. So he used us because he wanted to change the behaviors. But Warren Buffett's a good example. How many finance people do we listen to, and yet the media love Warren Buffett? Okay, so
Yeah.
here's an example. I love this phrase. He actually used it on me, so I want to say that. but he used it like publicly. Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. Okay. Now, if I'm trying to tell you, and a finance guy, I want you guys to understand only when times get tough do you realize who's really competent. People go, yeah, okay, fine. It's logic, the logic part of the brain. But if I said to you, which is what this is, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. First, you can probably laugh. It's visual. You got the word naked in there, which is a trigger word. It's like, whoa. And it really wakes up the brain, but it also makes you go, okay, what else do you have to say? And then Warren Buffett has tons of, he uses chiasmus, he uses trigger words. He knows these tools. Okay.
Right.
And so I'm talking to these, I'm talking to this company I was doing a turnaround for. Okay. And the first thing I wanted to say was, I know you guys are under a lot of pressure. Remember, pressure creates diamonds. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to get you from stress to success. Okay. And I want to tell you a joke on this. So first I said pressure creates diamonds. So it's a metaphor. It's not, the pressure you're under is not going to create diamonds, but it gets you to understand that what I'm basically saying is because you're under pressure, you could actually create something that's better than you would have created if you weren't under pressure. Yeah. And then I'm using alliteration, the repetition of sound. We take you from stress to success. This is stress to success. So I have this company I was doing a turnaround for, a martial arts equipment company. Okay. And they were in trouble financially. So when a company's in trouble financially, the owner of the company is terrified. Am I going to go bankrupt? And all this stuff. I worked so hard to build this company. And the employees are terrified. Even if he's not going to say to everybody we're in trouble, but people kind of get it. And so they know this is stressful. We don't know if we're going to keep our job. We love this company and everything else. So when I started working for him, I worked for him for about a year and it had dramatic results. But here's one of the reasons I had dramatic results. So when I started, I knew everybody was under stress. So I told them a joke. And my joke was, so the maintenance man is hiding in the maintenance closet. And when people come up to the closet, he opens the door and screams, "Supplies!" Not surprise, supplies. Okay. That's my joke. But let me tell you how they tortured me with that joke. So I would walk around the company like over the year, and I'd look inside, like they have sometimes windows so you can look inside somebody's office. And I'd look inside the office of this woman, and I could see just tremendous stress on her face. Her face was all, crunched up. And, I don't know if we had a product that we had a problem with or, raw materials or what it was, but it was something that was really, really bad. I could see her. She was really stressed. And so I opened up the door and I said, "Hey," and she looks at me and she goes, suddenly her face changes completely. She goes, "Supplies." She goes to me, "Supply." They were doing it. We'd go into business meetings and they go, "Here comes Jane. Supplies, all of us." Supply. They tortured me for a year. But it changed their body language. It changed their capabilities. It changed their creativity. And suddenly they became much more creative because they had laughter going on in their body. I mean, it was just amazing, how that works. And so there's a cortisol. Cortisol is if you get pissed off, if you get mad or scared, somebody really pisses you off or you lose a client, so you get really freaked out or something like that.
Yeah.
Cortisol flows through your bloodstream, and cortisol lasts up to 36 hours. People don't realize this in your bloodstream. Okay. So if you got pissed off yesterday and I tried to sell you something today, there's a good chance you probably will say, "Yeah, it sounds good, but I'm not really interested," or "Let me think about it," But mostly because they're overwhelmed with this negative that's caused this enzymes to go through your body. Okay.
Right.
One of the cures for cortisol is oxytocin, and oxytocin gets triggered from laughter. That's one of the things. Fascination too. If you show them something, they go like, "Whoa, that's amazing." It suddenly causes oxytocin to go through it. And oxytocin physiologically, literally waters down cortisol. And so I don't want to get all technical. I'm a technical guy. What can I say? But I'm just saying there's a physical change that happens in the chemistry of the person when you tell them a joke.
It's true. I've seen it. And I've actually been yelled at for being too jokey. And I'm like, "Look, I'm trying to change the environment here." And
my kids are like, "Oh no, Dad's going to tell a joke again." I have this great joke. Let me try this. I had these three women who are religious, kind of religious. So I wanted a religious joke. So I said, so a little girl comes up to her mommy and says, "Mommy, Daddy says we came from apes, but you say we came from Adam and Eve. Honey, Daddy's talking about his family. I'm talking about my family." Just
That's funny.
yeah,
But they were offended.
yeah, no, they were ready. They said, "Okay, so what do you want to talk to us about again?"
That's funny. I have noticed this for myself, because I would show up. I was freelance for most of my career, so I would show up on site backstage, and there's just chaos. And somebody ran up to me once and they said, "Oh, thank God you're here." And I said, "Why?" "When you're here, we all feel calm because when it hits the fan, you don't flip out. You just hunker down." And I didn't know that was my innate, natural way of doing things. And let's talk about this. I'm sure you have clients where you have to teach them to go against type in
Mhm.
order to win a sale. That guy who's a hardcore high D driven in the disc training, it's hard for him to understand, well, why would I joke? I want to close a sale. They don't care about your
Exactly.
birthday. They don't care about details. They're hunting. How do you change type with a person?
Well, you want to understand. So let me give you a few examples. So I had the martial arts equipment company, and we recognized that because one of the biggest problems in martial arts is carrying all the gear you have to bring when you're going out to exercise or whatever else. And I see it on,
Don't I know it?
exactly. Okay. And so we said, well, what's the biggest problem is that they have to carry all these loose things as well as stuff in a backpack. There's no backpack that's big enough. Okay, great. So we said, well, why don't you create a bigger backpack that could hold all this gear? Okay, great. That makes sense. So he created this backpack. And in the process of creating the backpack, he put 19 pouches. Okay. So some of them are waterproof, so you can put your stinky clothes inside and it's not going to make everything else smell. Some of them are hidden for money, so you can put money inside there. Or some for like if you got your iPad or something like your iPod or something like that, so you can have it in there, but just the wires coming out, things like that. And really exciting. And as he's developing the product, he's got all these benefits. So he decided to call the product the travel locker. And I'm like, why are you calling it a travel locker? He said, well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a travel locker. Anywhere you go, you can carry it. I said, no, that's a terrible name for it. Okay. I didn't say it that way because you say that to somebody, they're going to defend it. But he
Right.
defended it anyway, the travel locker. But I said, applying brain glue, travel locker is a metaphor. But what's the most important benefit of this product? The size. It's huge. So at first I
Right.
thought, let's call it a monster. No, that's not going to work. Let's call it the beast. A backpack so big that it carries all your gear. So I went back to him and I said that we need to change it to the beast. Well, he got pissed, as a lot of people do, because it's like that. But I came up with the name Travel Locker. I said, I got it, Paul. I got it. I got it. But the beast is a much better one. Of course, we run split test, and
Right.
suddenly he's embarrassed. But anyway, I wasn't trying to embarrass him. But we went around the company and I said, okay, here's the product. You guys know this is a new product. They said, yeah, we're excited about it. So Paul wants to call it the Travel Locker, but I think we should call it the Beast. And everyone, I didn't even finish the question. I was like, what do you think we should call it? They go, no, the Beast. That's what we want to call it. The Beast. A backpack so big that it holds all your gear. Yeah. Because it triggers the brain. Now, by the way, everywhere you see the ad, so the ads exploded when we called it the Beast, the backpack so big it holds all your gear, and we showed it. But he also has in small print the travel locker. He didn't want to give it up. I understand it. We all have the ego, but when we understand how these tools work. So there's a mom and her son who were on, who watched Shark Tank, and they went like, Shark Tank is really cool. We're not in business or anything, but it would be really cool if we can invent a product and maybe have success and get on Shark Tank. And so, they're thinking of like, what's a product we can come up with that would be really great. Eventually, they came up with this one because the mom had trouble. I think she was constipated or something. And the doctor said to her, when you're on the toilet, raise your feet 6 to 8 inches off the floor, and it
Yeah.
changes the shape of your body. It becomes much easier to go to the bathroom. So they did
Right.
that, and they thought like, wow, this is really great. We can actually create a product, like a Shark Tank kind of product for this. But what do we call it? Well, it's the toilet stool. You always start with logic, okay? It's the
Right.
toilet stool, okay? But they're going like, I don't like the word toilet in it, toilet stool. People aren't going to like it. So what's another word for toilet? Potty. Potty, okay. And you're kind of squatting. Squatty potty, rhyme, squatty potty. Let's call it the squatty potty. How successful did they become? In less than 2 years, they went from zero to $100 million of sales. They finally got on Shark Tank, and people, they were lining up to invest in them, all because of the name, because the
Yeah.
power. So here, let me give you another example of just how crazy things can be. Okay, wake up the brain. So Paul Tran invented an electric razor for man's private areas. I don't want to get too much into this, okay? But okay, for man's private areas. So what would you call your product? So he wanted a name that would wake up the brain so people would recognize, what it is, so people would understand what the product is, but he didn't want to offend people. So he's thinking, what's a good metaphor for it? Oh, it's just like a lawnmower. Why don't I call it the lawnmower? Okay. Who would name their product the lawnmower? He sold hundreds of millions of dollars. He went from like almost nothing. Okay. He actually changed the name of his company to Manscaped. We're going to landscape a man with a lawnmower. So like, here's the story. Okay. So I didn't buy it. I haven't bought the product. Okay, let me start there. Okay, but if I bought the product, I wouldn't share it with my friends. Okay, we'll start there. Okay, I wouldn't be sharing the lawnmower, but I can see myself calling a friend and saying, "Hey Joe, guess what I just bought? What? The lawnmower? Why? You have to mow your lawn? No, it's an electric razor for men's private areas." I can see him start laughing and go, "Wait a second. Hey Mary, call his girlfriend or his wife. Guess what James just bought? What? The lawnmower? The lawnmower? He's going to mow his lawn? No, it's to shave his private areas." You know, from word of mouth, it takes off like gangbusters.
Yeah.
Like Squatty Potty takes off like gangbusters. Hey, guess what? I just bought Squatty Potty. What's that? Okay. It's whoa. And it's fun. But I mean, who would name their electric razor? So I remember seeing in a store, I think it was Bed Bath and Beyond or something like that. And it has the words, the lawnmower with an arrow, and it has a shaver on it. And I'm like, a lawnmower? What the heck's that? And I start reading the text. Oh, I mean, it gets your
It,
attention.
yeah, it ingrains in your mind.
Oh yeah, for sure. You
Kind of
can't
like
forget it. I
like
say,
the pet rock, or some of these examples from history. I am laughing at Squatty Potty because we have one here at the house, and just love it. It just want to let you
if
know.
it was called the toilet stool, you think you guys would have bought it? For a lot of
Probably not,
people.
but my fiance is Asian, and she this is part of their culture. They know about this, so immediately she's like, "We got to get one of these for us," and so it was a no brainer. Yeah, we got the Squatty Potty and love it. Yeah, and it
Yeah.
does work, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you got to have a reasonable product, but there are tons of people out there that have reasonable products or good products or fabulous products, but they still struggle, and you don't have to. So let me give you two quick examples, if that's okay. One of them is so you a stay-at-home mom who created a Facebook page. She spent zero money and has 5 million, more than 5 million fans. So how did she do that? So she wanted to create a Facebook page, okay? And so she said, well, I'm a mommy, I'm a stay-at-home mom. So I don't know, mommy needs what? Mommy needs time to herself. Mommy needs a rest. Oh, I know what mommy needs. Mommy needs vodka. Okay. And so I remember I saw a post. So one of my friends must be, one of her fans. And so somehow they shared a post with me or whatever. And I saw this post. And it's a pretty good post. But I go like, it's mommy needs vodka? What the heck's that? And I clicked on the thing. Remember, flames coming out of the post, right? Mommy
Right.
needs vodka. I clicked on that and went to her site. I saw a bunch of her posts. I said, oh, yeah, this is great. And I became a fan, one of more than 5 million fans. How many people have fabulous Facebook pages? And how do you have 5 million fans? Okay, but she does. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
one. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I'm blown away because we're in a day and age where everybody's trying to figure out what the algorithm is to make something go viral. And a lot of times it's just a silly thing like that. Mommy needs vodka, and boom, everybody's leaning forward. Sorry to interrupt, but I
No,
think
you weren't. But so here's okay.
phenomenal.
So how's this one? Okay, how would you like to invent a product, an incredible product, and a competitor steals it from you, and they get rich, and you starve to death? Would you like that?
No.
Come on, Brad, you don't like that?
No.
Okay, let me give you a story of this actually happening. So Post Cereals competes with Kellogg's. And the head of Post Cereals said, we got to invent a new product that's really cool. And he invented this really amazing product. It's a cake, a little cake with jelly inside it. So it's got strawberries, blueberries, raspberries inside it, jelly. You put it in your toaster, and when it comes up, it's nice and warm, and you could eat it as breakfast or a snack or whatever else. 3 months, he decided to call it Country Squares. 3 months before, okay, you're laughing because you probably noticed. Let me tell you. So 3 months before he launched it, he bragged about it to the media. We're launching this product, Country Squares, and he showed the product. Okay. The head of Kellogg's went, oh my goodness, that is amazing. Guys, everybody over here, take a look at that. We invent that product. He's launching it in 3 months. We need that product. So in-house, they invented the product. Okay. They duplicated the product. Goes in a toaster. He said, then we need a really fantastic name. So it pops out of the toaster. So the name should have pop in it. Pops. And then back then, what's his name again? Andy Warhol was famous, and he was a
Right.
pop artist.
Right.
This is anchoring, where you take something that's already in everybody's brain. So he was hot right then during that time. So pop art, Pop-Tart. Let's call it Pop-Tarts. Of course, as a competitor, guess when he launched it? 1 week before Country Squares got launched. Sales exploded. And it's become the largest selling product that Kellogg's has. Okay. Sales
Wow.
exploded. He launched it 1 week before Country Squares launched. Okay. Nobody bought Country Squares. They sold out. They couldn't believe how fast it sold out. He ran apologies in major newspapers and magazines saying, we are so sorry. We didn't realize how much you guys are going to love this awesome product. Just hold on for a week or two, and it's going to be available again. Nobody bought Country Squares. They waited for Pop-Tarts to come available, and they bought Pop-Tarts. Country Squares continued trying to sell it, and within 6 months, they dropped the product and decided to stop selling it because they couldn't make money off it. And
Wow.
Kellogg's, as they say, they enjoyed wealth beyond their wildest dreams with Pop-Tarts. They stole the product, but they came up with a better name. And because they came up with a better name, sales exploded, and it hurt the guy that invented it.
Dude, you are a brain smith or a phrase smith. That is amazing. Great stories. How do we get a hold of you, by the way, James? Where do we go?
Well, I'm not in jail, so you don't have to worry about that. I always say, get a hold of me. Oh, no, wait, I give up. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I'm on Amazon, brainglue.com, brain glue. If you go to braingluebook.com, it'll take you to Amazon. But I also
Great.
have a page that's called, I also have a page that's called Yes Brain Glue. And it gives you lots of details about brain glue. It has testimonials and stuff like that, but it also gives you lots of details about brain glue. But I want to say this about brain glue. So yes, brainglue.com is really good. But this is one of the things that happens, okay? I didn't invent brain glue. I invented the term brain glue, okay? But it's existed since the beginning of man speaking, okay? When we start to
Wow.
understand famous phrases and stuff like that stick to our brain. People, when you read brain glue, which I think you'll find powerful, people are loving it. You're going to start recognizing brain glue all over the place, as I do.
Yes.
Okay. Because you're going to go, oh, wow, that Pop-Tarts. Hey, that uses brain glue. Hey, look, you're going to start seeing things. The haircut hero. Oh, he's using alliteration. That's a brain glue.
Yeah.
Too. You're going to start recognizing top sellers and massively successful products and ideas that are using those terms. So, yes, brain glue is an easy way to find it, but you're going to start seeing it everywhere and hearing it. Oh, yeah, just there's so many examples. I can give you.
It's so true because, when I was a teenager in the 70s, my first car that I bought with my dad's help was a 1974 Plymouth Duster. And once I bought that, I looked around and you'd be amazed at how many other people I started to notice had a Plymouth Duster. Okay. And so
Yep.
this is what we do. Once you are awakened to it, once you buy a particular car, you notice everybody has that car, or you start buying a product or wearing certain clothes, you start to recognize it. This is incredibly, this is a powerful episode. I want to thank you for being on Awakened Nation, James. And it's really been an honor, my friend.
Oh, Brad, it's been an honor for me. I love your podcast. Your podcast rocks. I mean, it's just, I was almost late to get on the podcast as I was telling you because I was listening to, I got stuck on two of the other podcasts I was listening to. So it was fantastic. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
my
much
friend.
for having me on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I'm not letting you go right away.
Uh-oh.
On every of my episodes, I do a lightning round where I ask deeper questions so that our audience gets to know you better. So, are you ready?
Sure. I
Oh,
think.
sure. You sound nervous. Here, I'm going to ask you this. Um, what makes you laugh? Because I notice you're a jovial guy. What really makes you laugh?
A lot of things. I think that I expect things that are going to make me laugh. So I can look at it, what's raining outside. People go, oh, it's terrible. I said, well, it's pretty funny. Look at what's happening. Our backyard is like flooded. Where I'm in Southern California now, so we had lots of rain. In fact, I knew when I was grown up and it stops being as much fun. I remember I have four kids, a son and three daughters. And when they were kids, I could tell that I was an old person when it started raining. I stepped out of the rain and they stepped into the rain. And I'm like, oh, that looks like fun. But yeah, just I think just having that expectation that life is fun. And I'll tell you
Uh,
this. I saw a guy who had a t-shirt that said life sucks and then you die. And I'm like, no. Although I do know one guy who can use that t-shirt, by the way, okay? But no, this is life right now. We have to have fun. If you're not having fun, you're missing your life. Life does not suck and then you die. Life is awesome, but we have to look for the awesomeness and the fun stuff.
I agree with you 100% on that one, James. Really do. My second question is, do you have a favorite memory?
Yeah, I became a consultant because I had problems with my mom. My mom had a hard time when she was, with my dad. And so she would be picking on me and everything else sometimes because I was the oldest of four kids. And so I got mad at my mom. But one day I realized that, she's having trouble because of her own life and what she's going through. It has nothing to do with me. And I started to realize that she loved me. And I started recognizing things that she did for me. And one of the things she did for me was she told me, and I think in grade six, I came home one day and I was just having trouble with school. I think math or something, although I love math now. And she said, you have to remember, they're there to teach you. So if you don't understand something, tell them you don't understand it and ask them to explain it in a better way. And that changed my life because I became a consultant because that's what I do. So tell me what you have. Tell me what kind of business you have. I'm amazed how people blah, 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 blah. They got to talk for 20 minutes before I go, oh, that's what you do. Okay. In school. So when I went to school, I remember this boy like it was yesterday. I'm in science class with this teacher. We love this teacher. I forget what his name was. And he said something in science class, and I didn't understand him. So I raised my hand and I said, "I don't understand what you're saying. Could you say that? Could you explain it a different way?" And he goes, "Okay, fine." He goes, da, 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 he explains it again. I didn't understand it, so I raised my hand and I said, I still don't understand it." And he says, "Well, look, we have to move on." I said, "Well, I don't think anybody else understands it." I turned to the rest of the class. I have no idea why I did this. I have guts to this. I turned to the rest of the class and I said, "If anybody else understood what he just said, please raise your hand." Nobody raised their hand. So I turned back to the teacher and said, "See, nobody understood what you said." I don't know how I had the courage to do that. He
Well,
said, okay,
let
fine. And he starts to explain it again. He says, "Now do you get it?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, I do. So thanks." And people would say to me after, "This is awesome," because you're getting to explain stuff that we never understand. But yeah,
James,
that's what I
that's
remember.
I love that story because I'm going to explain this to some of our audience members who are not boomers and a little younger. But when we went to school, you did not talk back to the teacher, and you definitely didn't raise your hand and go, "Hey, I don't get it." You might have done that once. You didn't do it two or three times and then take a consensus of the room. You just did not do that. So that really was courageous what you did. And I think it harkens back to your parents. They gave you the confidence to just say, "Hey, I really don't get this." Wow, God bless. That's awesome. My
Thank
third
you,
and
Mom.
final
Hey,
question,
Mom.
uh, for the work you do, because you love this behavioral work. What really lights you up in this work that you do?
Conversion, and it doesn't mean conversion certainly in selling and advertising. That's Brain Glue is all about that, how to get
Right.
people. But it's also conversion in I ran a behavioral management firm for 13 years. I talk about Warren Buffett's team and a lot of other famous people as well as big companies. One of the things I discovered early on, because I would run it, we had like 21 psychologists in organizational development and psychology and stuff like that. One of the first things we discovered is how many people are afraid to say, I don't know, or I don't know how. And it's because they don't want to look stupid.
Yeah.
And so we would discover that early on, and we would let people know, first of all, we're going to help you tackle a bigger goal than you've ever tackled. Okay. But because of that, you're going to be outside your comfort zone. And therefore, it's going to be something there are a lot of things that you don't know or you don't know how. So if you pretend that you know how to do this stuff, you're lying to yourself and to us. So we want you guys to feel comfortable admitting, I don't know, or I don't know how to do this. And once we've got people doing that, suddenly life became easier because they felt like safe, you
Right.
know? And so for me, I'm fascinated by, you know, to me, the biggest thing is behavioral management. I love behavioral management. I started in mechanical engineering and I went into advertising and photography, actually. Then I went from photography to advertising, and I learned so much about advertising that my clients started telling me, you need to sell yourself as an advertising agency because you're fabulous at that. I'm like, but I'm a photographer because I live in a box, right? We all live in a box. No, I don't care. I got referred to Kraft Foods and said, I'm sending you to Kraft. Do not tell them you're a photographer. I said, what? He said, no, just tell them if I could solve your problem, will you give me the project? And then we're going to tell you what the project is they're trying to figure out how to solve. And I said, okay. And I went there and suddenly won the client. It was like fantastic. And so then I went to advertising. So then from advertising, I went to marketing because marketing oversees advertising. It deals with,
Right.
how do you get people to do stuff? And
Right.
that was tough, but I finally went over to that. And eventually I went to behavioral management, which is the top of everything. It was, how do you get people to do what you want? Okay. How do you get a kid to go to bed on time? How do you get your client to buy your product? And so once I learned that, it became just very exciting. I'm just fascinated by it.
You have made David Ogilvy very proud.
Oh, I've got great David Ogilvy stories. We don't have time, but this, yeah.
Uh, I love it. Uh, in the 80s, I worked for a design firm in New York City, and the one of the owners had worked directly with David Ogilvy, and it was just exciting to hear those stories. It was phenomenal.
Well, David
Uh,
Ogilvy did Hathaway shirts, which Warren Buffett has
yes,
Hathaway. Okay, he owns it. Hathaway shirts became a blockbuster of success because Warren Buffett created. So if you're doing an ad for a shirt, what would you do? You have a good-looking guy wearing one of the nice shirts with a nice pair of pants. Hopefully, he's wearing shoes and not bare feet, in a nice background, right?
right.
David Ogilvy recognized everybody sees that. So how do I make flames come out of my ad? Okay, why don't I put an eye patch on the guy as if he's a pirate?
Yes, I
Okay,
remember that.
people are flipping through, and he calls it the man in the Hathaway shirts. Never explains why the guy has an eye patch, by the way. But you flip through and you go, huh, here's a guy with an eye patch, a man in a Hathaway shirt. Now you got the message, okay? David Ogilvy understood these tools, before I was born in some of them. I wasn't that old, but just
Yeah.
it was profound in the stuff he understood.
Well, he invented the most interesting man in the world before anybody invented the most interesting man in the world. And what I loved about David Ogilvy is he approached advertising from a logic base, just like you did, with strategy, data, looking through what triggers people. And one of his greatest phrases actually came up with was his secretary, who I believe went on to start her own ad agency. She came up with "Diamonds are a girl's best friend," and it's legendary stuff like that that just makes me go, "Wow, you're on the right path, my friend. You're doing
Well, and
great work."
you see lots of them. People don't realize how easy it is to create this stuff. That's why brain glue is like resonating with so many people, because you see other things, but then we come up with a logical description of our product or service or a logical name. That's okay. You always want to start with logic. but it's so easy to suddenly create brain triggers where you go like, oh, I'll go back to my guy because I'm torturing him with this bare naked advertising.
Right.
I'm saying we're thinking because we had an advertising group, and I said we're thinking of changing the name to bare naked advertising. Everybody, there wasn't a single person that didn't say that's an awesome name, and he's going, well, I'm not sure I want to do that.
The
But so,
owner
yeah,
always has trouble. That's how it goes.
exactly. But it's just, life is fun. We're not getting you a t-shirt that says life sucks and then you died. Life is fun. Let's start having fun.
Yes.
And brain glue. Hopefully you'll like brain glue.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James I. Bond, or James Bond for short. Please pick up a copy of his extraordinary book, which we covered a lot of today, and that is Brain Glue: How Selling Becomes Much Easier by Making Your Ideas Sticky. Thank you, James, for being on today's show here on Awakened Nation.
Thank you, Brad, so much for having me here.
You're welcome. Hey, everybody, tune in next week. We're going to have another awesome guest once again. And until then, bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.